Spider-Man has reached a new level of being down on his luck, and as a part of that is no longer with Mary Jane. So who is it that he's going to be dating? On top of that, some of his oldest villains are returning. So how will he be juggling his newest girlfriend and a returning villain? This is the Comicstorian channel, where I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues. I break them down into an audio drama, which allows you to understand what's going on in the world of comic books, and then you can know what to go buy and add to your collection at your local store. Today we've been covering the storyline of Amazing Spider-Man, where Spider-Man did something 6 months ago that basically ruined his life, but they haven't revealed that secret yet. In today's issues 11 to 13, we're going to see him starting to attempt to rebuild his life with a brand new girlfriend and learning to work with his new boss, Norman Osborn. Now, Norman Osborn is a good guy right now. His sins were pulled out of his body, and he's trying to make amends by hiring Spider-Man and creating a brand new Spider-Man suit for him. So, how is all this going to move forward? Since being judged by the progenitor in the Axe event, Peter has focused much of his time being the best that he can. Whether it be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man or throwing himself into his work at Oscorp. While Peter began working on a project with intern Kamala Khan, Norman came by to see how far along things had gotten, which happened to not be as far along as he would have wanted. But as Peter and Kamala quietly talked about which one of them should take the blame, Norman got pulled aside by his legal department regarding an issue that they were running into. With that issue seemingly being more pressing than the project's, Peter said that they'll make sure to take care of it tomorrow, before Norman can get a little upset. But for now, they'll call it a day so that they can get in bright and early. Of course, this was an excuse for Peter to slip out of work early to put his suit back on to get some fresh air with his current fling, Black Cat. As the two of them jump from rooftop to rooftop, Black Cat says that she needed this. She's been cooped up trying to crack a new biometric safe that just came out. Peter says that she's doing it for the greater good, right? Black Cat tells him of course, but more importantly, why did he bring her all the way out here? He says that they need to talk. About them. Because they're doing that thing again where she pursues him and he pushes her away because he's scared. She realizes what's going on and looks at him. You want to nip it in the bud and to reiterate that we'll always be good friends. Peter realizes what all of this looks like. What? No. Actually, I just wanted to ask you out for once. Kind of cut the chase. She smiles, telling him that she'll think about it. But him taking the initiative is actually a good thing. The confidence, it looks good on him. As she leaves, Peter decides to go back home when he happens to find someone waiting in his apartment building. Ned Leeds, former Hobgoblin. Peter asks him how is it going, and Ned tells him that he's chasing a story, a big one, and since he's working for Osborn, he'll make things go a little smoothly. Peter realizes and tells Ned that the job is good. Norman's come a long way from being a megamaniacal villain. Him messing things up really isn't something he'd want to do right now. Ned says that he knows that the newsman is still there. It's in Peter's blood. Look at these photos and tell me how you feel, Peter. You want to get down to the story of Oscorp. Peter flips through the stacks of photos of Roderick Kingsley, another former Hobgoblin, and Norman, together. Ned tells him, that's right, the Hobgoblin, the man who brainwashed me and made me think that I was the Hobgoblin, the man who had me killed, talking to your boss. Peter tells him that it looks bad, sure, but he's not sure if anything is wrong at the moment. Ned takes the photos and tells Peter that if he doesn't want to get back in the game, he'll handle this himself. The next day, Norman goes over the finishing touches of the new prototype suit that he's working on when Peter comes to him directly asking about Kingsley. Norman sighs. Well, Peter, I was hoping to spare you some of the ugliness, but while I've been working hard to undo my wrongs, Roderick Kingsley has shown less altrucity. Peter's stunned. Wait, you're not talking about teaming up with Hobgoblin? Actually, quite the opposite. Back in my wilder days, Kingsley approached me with a deal. He'd fallen afoul of the law and offered to sell his corporate empire to help secure his freedom. Kingsley didn't have much choice and his options were limited. So when I rebuffed the offer, you stole his empire. I did it in a perfectly legitimate way, Peter, from a legal standpoint. Now Kingsley is threatening violence, blackmail, and general ruin if I don't give it back to him, with interest. Peter tells him that he can't stoop to that level. Norman tells him that he agrees, which is why he isn't. The lawyers are drawing up contracts to just straight out return Kingsley his holdings. He's going to meet with him and ask for his forgiveness. Okay, but I'm not going to let you do this alone, Norman. All right. The meeting is happening at Red Hook Warehouse Thursday night. All right, Spider-Man will be there, and I'll handle things just in case something goes wrong. So the next day, which was a Wednesday, Norman drives out to the Red Hook warehouse to meet with Kingsley, telling him that he's alone, as requested, along with all of the paperwork. Kingsley looks at the folder. "You were a fine steward to all of my babies. I hope they're doing well, except for the fashion house. Who didn't see that coming?" After going through the paperwork, Kingsley asks, "Is that it? You're just gonna give me what I want?" "I'm afraid so. I just want to move on, Kingsley." At that moment, the two hear a winding sound coming out of one of the warehouses, and suddenly that building explodes. As Kingsley's men get up, something shoots by, ripping them apart and knocking both Norman and Kingsley over. When they both look up, a voice yells out, "You left your past to fester in the darkness. Tonight, your acrid crop comes to harvest, and madness rides the night wind." And with blood on his glider, the hobgoblin begins to cackle. The next day, Peter enters Norman's hospital, telling him that he's a liar. He said the meeting was tonight, not last night. "I thought I could handle myself, Peter. I didn't want you there. But there was a hobgoblin, and it wasn't Kingsley. This new hobgoblin ambushed us and slaughtered all of his men. I thought I was going to be next, but the hobgoblin beat me to a pulp, and then he just left. Maybe he got bored. I didn't put up much of a fight." Peter says that he's taking this seriously, isn't he? And Norman says, "Of course, any act of aggression could be the one that leads me to him. I don't want to be the Green Goblin again." "All right, Norman. I'll handle the hobgoblin, whoever it is this time. But there's something else. Ned Leeds. He says that he was looking into something at Oscorp, which is something that we're going to talk about soon enough." So later, as Peter is knocking on the door of Betty Brandt, he's hoping he can find Ned Leeds. But Betty tells him that Ned isn't home, and she reveals that things have become strange with Ned. At first, Ned was looking into Norman working with Roderick. But then Ned said that Norman had surveillance on them. Ned was convinced that Osborn wanted their son, Winston. Something about the goblin serum in his blood. Peter says that she can tell him anything, but Betty breaks down crying, telling him that she doesn't know where he got it, but sometimes when Ned comes home, he's wearing it. After getting details on the office that Ned has been working out of, Peter rushes over to see if he can find out exactly what is going on. As he approaches the window, Ned shouts, "Great! You're here! They're all after me! And Osborn's at the top, Peter!" Peter climbs in, telling him to take it easy, and then he notices a machine in the back. The machine that is the Winkler device. A machine that can rewrite your memories, wiping them out or implanting new ones. Peter looks at him. "All right, just talk to me for a moment, Ned. That machine is making you think that you're the hobgoblin." No, you're just trying to confuse me." Just then, his spidey sense begins to blare, and before Peter could react, there's an explosion as Hobgoblin bursts through the wall, slamming his glider into Peter. With the spikes of the glider lodged directly into Peter's back, he tries to brace himself from the coming impact as the Hobgoblin flies out of the apartment. He then stops as Peter's body is flung forward, but thankfully his glider detects the sudden movement, catching him. The glider that Norman made for him with his new supersuit. Hobgoblin shouts, "Is that a glider? Is this a joke? All right, let's see who's the better glider wielder." Hobgoblin charges in for his next attack, with Peter responding, telling him, "You better be careful what you wish for," and he throws a small ball of nano spiders. The Hobgoblin screams, trying to wipe and pull them off of his mask, but in doing so, Peter swings by, grabbing him, throwing him into a nearby watchtower. Back over in the hospital, Norman sits up at his bed, going over the final touches to a new spider suit, when he gets a notification that an incident log has been reported in the current one that Peter Parker is wearing. He activates the body cam and watches Peter fighting as he shouts, "Who are you?" The Hobgoblin tells him, "Knowledge is earned, worm! Earned in anguish and blood." Peter begins to punch him. "Maybe, but not mine. Not this time." As the two struggle, Peter grabs the mask, beginning to pull, revealing the man underneath, the new Hobgoblin to be Roderick Kingsley. Peter stops staring. "Wait, how is this even possible? I watched you fight yourself." But then his spider sense goes off once more, and he's attacked from behind. Kingsley picks up his mask. "Maybe I should have taken a harder look at Ned Leeds, because it was my pleasure to put him back where he belonged, in the Winkler device. One Hobgoblin is back, and Ned Leeds makes two." Between the barrage of pumpkin bombs and aerial attacks, Peter is forced to be on the defensive while trying to minimize as many hits as possible. But as he dodges one, another hobgoblin is there ready to cut into him, making this a very uneven fight. After getting off of a building, Peter manages to grab a hold of Bug once more, trying to make his escape. But he already knows that outrunning the two of them isn't an option. So instead he webs up a nearby antenna, flinging himself around it, launching himself into Ned, telling him, "You gotta snap out of it! You're being controlled, Ned!" Kingsley then flies by, punching Peter directly in his back, causing the two of them to be thrown off balance. And as Kingsley regains himself on his glider, he swoops by Peter just before getting on his own, destroying it in the process. Ned makes another round with his glider, and the two go back and forth, cutting Peter again and again. Kingsley and Ned jump down, walking up, with Kingsley grabbing his glider, getting ready to use it to end Peter's life. But at that moment, Norman rockets in wearing the new prototype suit, the Gold Goblin, just barely saving Peter. Peter manages to sit up asking, "Is that you?" "I didn't want violence, but now they've gone and got it." Kingsley attempts to shake Norman off by throwing several pumpkin bombs, but Norman says, "I got something better," and he blasts Kingsley off of the glider. Ned quickly races over to catch Kingsley, telling him, "I got you! Together we can punish Norman for what he did to us." Kingsley climbs up, punching Ned off. "You're an idiot! Osborn was never after your family. I just put that in your head to make you useful, and now you have a better use." As Ned falls off of the glider, Peter uses what strength he has to save him, but still Kingsley's influence holds over him as he now begins to attack Peter. But before he can, Norman punches him, asking, "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Norman continues to punch him over and over again, beating Ned to an inch of his life, only stopped when Peter shouts that he needs to stop. Norman realizes that he was slipping, that he was about to beat a man to death, and turns around. Of course. Once the police show up, Peter slips away. But before returning home, he stops by Betty's place to let her know what's going on. He tells her that Norman is going to get Ned the best lawyer in town. But Betty says they're going to throw the book at him. Peter tries to comfort her, telling her that it wasn't Ned's fault. It was Roderick. And after the authorities come to examine the Winkler device, they'll see that all of this was just implanted in Ned's head again. But Betty stops him. "Didn't you hear? Spider-Man must have been mistaken. The police searched in Ned's office. They never found the Winkler device." That's when we see later, at an unknown location, Kingsley walks in as his guards ask if this is what he wanted. Kingsley looks at the Winkler device. "Yes, now leave me be." Once alone, he willingly sits in the device, stating that the cops have leads. There won't be any use for the Winkler device. But a voice tells him, "Yes, but you won't remember any of that. Turn your mind off now. It is in my hands." Kingsley nods. "Of course." And as the machine is activated, the voice tells him, "I needed two of you to succeed, and Osborn's back on the road to becoming his true self." The Goblin Queen begins to laugh, stating that Norman's sins will come back to haunt him. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. The next segment of this storyline is the Dark Web event, and we're going to be trying a new style of video to catch you up on that while I work on the audio drama for it behind the scenes. So if you want to see what's going to happen, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I would really appreciate your support.